2.2 million Canadians walked into a food bank last month. That is not a typo. That is not a statistic from the Great Depression. That is Canada, right now, this month. And while that was happening, your Prime Minister was in Switzerland, sipping whatever they sip in Switzerland, giving speeches to a room full of billionaires about the New World Order. Let that sink in for a second, folks. 2.2 million visits to food banks in a single month. Food Banks Canada says that number has doubled since 2019. Doubled. It took decades to crack 1 million. It took 5 years to blow past 2 million. And 1 in 3 of those people walking through those food bank doors is a child. Not a statistic. A kid. A Canadian kid who is going to school hungry, while Mark Carney gets a standing ovation in Davos. And here's the part that really chaps my hide. Nearly 20% of people using food banks right now are employed. These are not people who gave up. These are people holding down jobs, showing up every day, doing everything right, and they still cannot afford to eat. In this country, Canada, one of the wealthiest countries on the face of the earth, we have working people who cannot buy groceries. Full-time workers lining up with their toque pulled down, hoping nobody recognizes them. That is the country Carney has been running. Now, to be completely fair, Carney did announce something. He called it the Canada Groceries and Essentials Benefit. A family of 4 will eventually get up to $1,400 a year. Sounds good on a podium. Sounds real nice standing in front of a campaign-style sign at an Ottawa grocery store with reporters taking pictures. But let me put it in real language for you. That works out to about $27 a week for a family of 4. 27 bucks. You know what $27 gets you at the grocery store these days? Maybe 2 bags of stuff if you're shopping smart and nothing goes wrong. Meanwhile, beef prices are up close to 18% year over year, according to Dalhousie University's food price report. And they are forecasting another 4 to 6% jump this year on top of that. So Carney is handing you a garden hose while the barn is on fire and calling it flood relief. And do you know what this benefit actually is when you strip away the new name they gave it? It is the GST rebate. Same thing Trudeau did in 2022. Literally the exact same policy with a fresh coat of Liberal paint on it. Poilievre spotted it immediately and said, and I am paraphrasing but only barely, the Conservatives will let this recycled Trudeau idea pass because at least it does something. That is not exactly a ringing endorsement from your own side when the official opposition is calling your big grocery announcement a warmed-over hand-me-down. Even the parliamentary budget officer priced this whole thing out at $12.4 billion over 6 years. That is $12 billion to hand people back a portion of a tax they were already paying, while doing nothing about the actual reasons food costs so much in the first place. But here is where this week gets genuinely fascinating. Because while Canadians were standing in food bank lineups, the NDP just elected themselves a brand new leader, Avi Lewis, the grandson of a former NDP leader, the son of another former NDP leader, the husband of Naomi Klein. This fellow has never once won a seat in Parliament. Never. He ran twice and lost both times. And his big idea to fix the grocery crisis is to have the government run grocery stores. 50 of them. He says it will cut food prices 40%. Now look, I understand the frustration. I really do. Grocery prices are brutal, and the big chains have been making record profits while Canadians stretch every dollar. That frustration is real, and it is legitimate. But the solution Avi Lewis is offering is to hand your weekly grocery run to the same people who run the post office and the passport office and the Phoenix Pay system. The government that cannot consistently get your mail to you on time wants to run your corner store. The government that somehow lost track of billions in pandemic spending wants to manage a national grocery chain. This is not me being dramatic. This is just basic common sense, eh? Danielle Smith said Lewis sounds pretty communist, and Poilievre agreed on camera. And you know what? When the Premier of Alberta and the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada are both saying the same thing at the same time, maybe worth paying attention to that. Lewis himself called his own campaign an anti-capitalist movement. Those are his words, not mine. Not Poilievre's, not Smith's, his own words. Anti-capitalist. And his plan is not just grocery stores. He also wants government-run telecom companies, a national bank run through Canada Post, a moratorium on new pipelines, and a wealth tax. He describes this as solutions as big as the crises. Well, buddy, government bureaucracy running out of frozen peas is not a solution to a food crisis. It is a whole new crisis piled on top of the first one. Even Tom Mulcair, the former NDP leader who himself is no right-winger, pointed out that the next step for Lewis is to actually win a seat in Parliament before he starts rewriting the Canadian economy. You do not get to redesign the whole cockpit from the airport lounge, folks. Now let me come back to Davos, because that is where Carney was when Canadians needed leadership at home. In January, while Canadians were starting the new year with sticker shock at every grocery store in the country, he flew to Switzerland and gave a speech about the rupture in the world order. Very dramatic, very eloquent. The Europeans loved it. Trump got irritated. The Financial Times called it uncharacteristically candid. Good for Carney, truly. A nice speech. But here is the real-world thing that happened right after that speech. Carney comes back to Canada, stands at an Ottawa grocery store, and announces a GST rebate boost that he already knew was not going to come close to solving the problem. Meanwhile, back in Toronto, the Daily Bread Food Bank has already racked up over 920,000 visits just since January 1st of this year. Just Toronto. Just the first 3 months. The food bank CEO is telling reporters that a ship carrying rice for the food bank got struck near Iran. They are scrambling to feed people while the federal government is over there doing diplomacy photo ops with Larry Fink at the World Economic Forum. You know what actually helps working Canadians put food on the table? Getting government costs out of the supply chain so food gets from the farm to your plate without 3 layers of regulations and fees making it more expensive at every step. Poilievre has been saying for 2 years that you have to deal with the industrial carbon tax, the fuel standard costs, the packaging regulations that all pile on top of each other and add to what you pay at checkout. He calls it getting the permits out of the way and letting Canada produce. He is right. Canada has some of the best farmland on Earth. We produce more than enough to feed ourselves and a lot of the world on top of it. The problem is not supply. The problem is a government that treats every step of getting food to you as an opportunity to regulate, tax, or manage something. The Conservatives pushed back on the grocery rebate not because they want Canadians to go hungry. The opposite. They want the root causes dealt with. Repeal the food inflation packaging tax. Cut the industrial carbon tax out of the transportation costs. Let the Competition Bureau actually do its job against the grocery oligopoly. These are real levers. These produce real results. Not $12 billion spread over 6 years that works out to the price of 2 grocery bags a week. Here's the real picture of the choice Canadians are looking at right now. You've got a prime minister who flies to Davos to give speeches about the architecture of the global order while food bank usage hits all-time records at home. Then comes back and relabels a Trudeau-era rebate and calls it bold action. And you've got a brand new NDP leader who genuinely believes that if the government just takes over enough things, from your groceries to your phone plan to your bank account, Canada will magically become affordable. Neither of those things is a plan. One is a speech, the other is a wish. Canadians who are skipping meals right now do not need a speech about middle power solidarity. They do not need government grocery stores that will be run with all the efficiency and warmth of a Service Canada wicket on a Tuesday afternoon. They need a government that gets out of the way of the people who grow, transport, process, and sell food. They need permits issued. They need costs removed from the supply chain. They need competition in the grocery sector instead of a handful of companies that know Ottawa will never actually hold them to account. Canada built itself on the back of people who worked hard, expected straight dealing, and did not want the government telling them what was on the shelf. That is not radical. That is just Canada, eh? And until we get a government that actually understands that, 2.2 million Canadians a month will keep walking through those food bank doors with their chin down and their pride dented. And the Prime Minister will keep giving great speeches somewhere else.